our Holy Father's homily based on these readings.
When Paul
was invited to pray in the synagogue in Antioch in order to proclaim this new doctrine, that is to explain Jesus, to announce Jesus, proclaim Jesus. Paul begins by speaking of the history of salvation. Paul got up and began, "The God of this people Israel chose our ancestors and exalted the people during their sojourn in the land of Egypt." It's all of salvation, the history of salvation. Stephen did the same thing before his martyrdom, and Paul another time. The author of the letter of the Hebrews did the same thing. When he recounts the story of Abraham and all of our fathers, our forefathers. And we sang the same thing today. "Forever I will sing the goodness of the Lord. Through all generations my mouth shall proclaim your faithfulness." And we sang the story of David. "I have found David my servant." Matthew and Luke do the same thing. When they begin to speak of Jesus, they start with the genealogy of Jesus. What does this mean? That behind Jesus, before Jesus, there was a history, a story of grace, a story of election, a story of promise. The Lord chose Abraham. And he went with his people at the beginning of Mass. In the opening hymn, we said in the antiphon, when the Lord accompanied his people and opened the way, you walked beside, near your people. There's a story, a history of God with his people. And because of this, when Paul is asked to explain the reason for faith in Jesus, he doesn't begin with Jesus Christ, but he begins with the history. Christianity is a doctrine, but not only. It's not only the things that we believe, it's a history that brings this doctrine and God's promise, God's covenant. To have been chosen by God. Christianity is not only an ethic. Yes, it's true. It has moral principles. But you are not a Christian only with an ethical vision. It's more. Christianity is not a group of people, elite, who have been chosen, who then take the church forward. For example, I belong to this institution, I belong to that movement, which is better than yours. A sense of elitism. Christianity is not this. Christianity is belonging to a people chosen by God freely. If we do not have this awareness of belonging to a people, we will be ideological Christians with a doctrine, a small doctrine, small affirmations of truth with an ethic, with morality, and that's all good. Or as people who are elite, that we're part of a group chosen by God, we're Christians, everyone else is going to hell, or they'll be saved by God's mercy, but they're thrown out, and so on and so forth. And unless we have an awareness of belonging to a people, we're not true Christians. And because of this, Paul explains Jesus from the beginning of his belonging to a people. And many times, we believe in these partialities of dogma or with a sense of being elite. And this does us a lot of harm. And we lose that sense of belonging to the holy, faithful people of God. That Jesus chose in Abraham and had promised, the great promise, who is Jesus, who gave them great hope and who entered into a covenant with him. Awareness of a people. Something that always strikes me is the passage in Deuteronomy. I think it's in the 26th chapter, when it says, one time a year you will go to present the offerings, the first fruits to the Lord. And when your son asks you, but why, Father, why are you doing this, Daddy? You're not to say that Jesus commanded us. No, we were a people. God liberated us to recount the story as Paul did here. To transmit the story, the history of our salvation. The Lord, in the same book of Deuteronomy, counsels when you will have arrived in the land that you did not conquer, and eat the fruit that you did not plant, and you will live in houses that you did not build. At the moment of giving the first fruits, recite the famous creed that's in Deuteronomy. My father was a wandering Aramean. He stayed in Egypt for 400 years and liberated him and brought him forward. They sang the story, the memory of a people. The memory of a people, of being a people. And this story of the people of God, until it arrived at Jesus Christ, there were saints and sinners, and many common people, good with virtues and sinners, but everyone. The famous crowd that followed Jesus, that had a sense of belonging to a people. Christians who do not have this sense is not a true Christian. He or she is a bit particular, feels he or she is just or righteous, but without a people. Belonging to a people, to have the memory of the people of God. Paul teaches this, Stephen, another time Paul, the apostles. And the advice that the author of the letter to the Hebrews gave, remember your ancestors, that is, those who preceded you on this journey of salvation. If someone would ask me, should ask me, what for you is the deviation of Christians today or always? What for you is that deviation that's the most dangerous for Christians? I would say, without hesitation or doubt, lacking the memory of belonging to a people. When this is missing, dogma, ethics, morals, elite movements come, but the people is missing. A people, a sinful people always. We're all sinners. But it doesn't generally make a mistake. This sense of a people who walks behind a promise and who was in a covenant that perhaps doesn't fulfill, but knows it. Let us ask the Lord for this awareness of being a people that the Madonna so beautifully sang in her Magnificat, that Zechariah sang so beautifully in his Benedictus. Songs that we pray every day, hymns that we sing every day in the morning and the evening. The awareness of a people. We are the holy, faithful people of God. That, as the Second Vatican Council, the first and then the second, in its totality, with the sense of faith, is infallible in this manner of belief.